Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash as well as the latest episode of Legends of Tomorrow. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of The Flash, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Legends of Tomorrow. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of The Flash. So in this episode, we have kind of our Ralph's real first time going all superhero. And as to be expected, it's a little rough just because Ralph himself is a little rough around the edges. I even love the fact is that Iris and Barry had to get hypnotized by, interestingly enough, their therapist, but I guess it's she's the only trained medical professional in that realm because they needed him hypnotized to find out who else is on the bus. We only got a look at two people. We ended up finding out one in this episode. That was the meta they ended up going into in this episode named Mina, but kind of get to that soon enough. But obviously, multiple times, he only recognized her by her bust. Then he also did the same thing to Caitlin. It's wait, did he just ignore him? And the Barry mouth to where it's just stop. It's just Ralph is a whole new breed, and it's I don't think there's never been a character like him amongst any of the shows, and I think that's what makes him so unique in both a good and a bad way, sure. But a big thing about this was him learning the tricks of the trade. The fact of the matter is he's so focused. It's well, Barry, you save that guy, sure, but you let her get away. Which I get that give and take because it's well, a superhero is supposed to stop the bad guys, and it's yeah, we saved someone, but you let the bad guy get away, and at least to the bad guy doing more damage. But it's hey, if Barry didn't interfere, that guy would have died. Also appreciate the fact is he destroyed that armor by vibrating into it like he did Savitar's armor last season. That was the first time he's ever done that, right? Vibrated inside of an object like that, at least to my recollection. There might have been earlier instances of that, but I think that was one of the first times he ever did that was against Savitar. And I think because it's also a suit of armor he was doing it too, I think that's kind of a little wink and nudge towards I remember when he did that to Savitar's armor and how cool it was. I just like the way when he vibrates and it just kind of explodes into pieces. That looks pretty cool. I mean, in this particular instance as well. So, but ultimately, they ended up capturing Mina the first time, and it's thanks to, Ralph not doing what Barry needed him to do. But ultimately, a girl got hurt. Granted, she wasn't badly hurt. She was okay, but it hit Ralph. At first, I was thinking, the reason why he's taking those first, I was is there a possibility of I wonder if that's something we're going to deal with in the future too, the whole X situation. Is it going to be an X situation? Maybe possible kid thing? Probably not. But that's what I was thinking initially. But it's no, it's because it hit him because it's for him, he's lived so long. It's just kind of being kind of a little bit scummy because as a PI, he always had to dig up dirt on people. No matter what the situation it did for whatever. He never had to deal with the aftermath. It's even if this situation destroyed someone's life, didn't matter. Because for him, all he did was dig up dirt. He never had to care about anyone. The only person he had to worry about was himself. But now he's a superhero and everything. Now he has to worry about helping other people. And it's just it's something new for him. And he doesn't really know how to handle it. Which Barry gives him the best advice. It's all you can do is try your best. Barry knows and said it from his own experience. The fact of the matter is, there's been plenty of times when he's done something and it's hurt a lot of people. But all you can try and do is make sure you learn from that, essentially learn from that experience and try to be a better person. That's just, it comes with the territory of being a hero. Which also, interestingly enough, in this episode, we got our first look at Ralph's superhero suit, which obviously it's in its beta form. So obviously there's probably Ralph's come on, where's the pizzazz and everything. So obviously there's going to be more to it later on. Once again, I'm not that familiar with Elongated Man. I saw a little bit of a picture. I don't know how that would really correlate with the TV show because that particular outfit, he didn't have a mask on or anything. He just had the suit on, and I vaguely remember because I took a quick look at it when I was looking things up 2 weeks ago. So but it didn't look like it was a suit that had a mask. So I'm curious about that whole situation. So, because this one obviously covers up his identity and everything. So, which obviously I can't believe I skipped over the beginning too. I really love that too, of them being robbed. And it's whoa, hold on. It's okay, this is a perfect opportunity. You take it. All right, I can do this and do this. And the guy's excuse me, I'm still here robbing you. It's give us a minute. Dude shot at Ralph and ended up shooting himself twice. Once in the leg and once in the butt. That really sucked. It's stop shooting him. It's I can't help that he's shooting me and accidentally shooting himself in the process because he's bouncing off of me. Immediately, stuff like that makes me immediately think of Luffy. It should make me think of Mr. Fantastic because it was my first experience with like an Elastic Man, but not even just the Marvel thing of it. It's just like Luffy's the more rubbery man that I'm like more familiar with. So I did appreciate the fact is that they had to deal with a T-Rex later on in the episode. I didn't actually break it down, but I also like the way Mina's power worked. It's like she can basically lead the way Caitlyn kind of basically said was like she took the dark matter and left kind of an imprint in people. So not people in objects, in particular objects that are very like statue-like. So she can't do it to every object. It has to be very like a mannequin is something she would be able to do it to. Like hence what she did to like that police armor and everything in this episode. So as well as that statue from like the first guy she ended up killing. So but I appreciate it being Ralph. They ended up taking down that T-Rex by wrapping his body around it, which is a little weird because it's just like I'm so not used to that, which is like I should be because going back to the example of Luffy, but I guess because it's been a while since I've dealt with the whole like stretchy body and rubbery body, it just kind of throws me off for a little bit because it gets in that weird territory. You're just like it does something when you think about it too much, I guess. Because once again, this is like live action, whereas One Piece is animated, so that there's a difference there. So I don't know. Nevertheless, that's just me kind of going off on my own tangents. I mean, it's kind of sad because Mina, like, her whole situation, what she's doing now, isn't that different from what she was doing before she became a metahuman. But obviously, becoming a metahuman, we've seen that it kind of, like, messes with people's personalities. Obviously, we saw what it did to Caitlyn. Once again, Caitlyn being the only example of it. But it's just like, it amplifies what was already there. If you're a kind-hearted, good person, then I think on tendency, really, it depends on your situation because like Magenta's situation was like she went through a lot of stuff, and so she kind of had a split personality situation going on, so that's why her powers manifested the way they did. But more often than not, obviously with the good guys, like the metahuman abilities are just because they're good in nature, so obviously it's going to reflect that way, you know. So, and really quickly, since I brought her up earlier, I wonder are we going to see more of Sharon, the therapist that they went to in this episode. I love that. He's like, oh, I see that he's looking at her page. He's like, oh, I see you didn't go to Harvard. She's like, well, did you go to Harvard? He's like, I see what you did there. It's like, why do you have to be such an asshole, Ralph? I kind of love you for it, but come on, dude. But again, that what I was saying is because Mina was trying to get back these things that were treated like they're like Sue artifacts, and it's like for her it's like they're being treated as like tinsels because that one dude was blowing on it like it was a pipe, that one piece as a pipe and everything. And it's like you're spitting on her people and her heritage. It's like you're saying this is American history. It's like no, because this is part of our culture. We're still here. We're not history. We're alive. Obviously she went about it the wrong way, but it was to the point that, you know, Ralph felt sympathetic to her and he ended up mailing it off to like her family and friends, like, you know, people that would know how to properly take care of it, because it's like it doesn't deserve to be in a museum because that is part of their culture, and it's like it to be kind of just used as an ogling device to kind of make people go, ooh, like it has significance in their culture. So it was nice seeing Ralph kind of taking that extra step in that regard. I also appreciate what they did, and they kind of did a similar thing with Lethal Weapon. I know it's kind of a weird, crossing streams with TV shows and stuff like that. But basically, like the Microsoft's Surface commercials tying in with the episode a little bit. In this particular case, he goes to Caitlyn about like a date. Not unless I'm misinterpreting it, because there's a whole like, learning how to like fold his body into like balloon animals, which he does later on for the little girl in the hospital, because he was like, no, it's not a date. It's like, oh, you don't want to shell out the money, which is like, now it's even worse, because not only were you not willing to shell out the money to buy something like flowers or something for a date, it's worse because it's like, oh, this is the little girl that you hurt, but you still are too cheap to put forth money for that, if that's what that was. But because I think that's what that was kind of implying there, so I thought that was kind of pretty neat, making balloon animals for her like that. So obviously this is like a big episode of like showing his growth of like, oh man, he's not such a bad guy after all. And obviously another part of this episode dealt with Harry. It seems like we get introduced to his other friends who turn out to be other whales from different worlds. I'm so curious, like what's up with that Wales the Great? What world is that one from? Like what is that supposed to be referencing? Like is that supposed to mean like, is that him just in a different world being a cosplayer, or there's a part of me that's like super meta about it. Just thinking about it, it's like, is that supposed to be like, could that be like him in a different universe where he's an actor, which then it turns into the actor Tom Cavanaugh playing a version of himself who's an actor from, it gets super meta about the whole situation. That's what I was thinking. Or not unless he's just a version of himself in a different world where he actually has magic, or maybe he's just, I don't know. There's so many different possibilities when it comes to this whole multiverse situation. But I really love that they get to do that, because it's like, because like I said, even amongst the whales that we've known, obviously the one that Eobard was disguised as, obviously Harry and HR, very different. And obviously you got a peek of that last season too, when they were looking for the different Harrys to kind of fill that role. But obviously these Harrys didn't get along. They were like, oh yeah, we're super smart and everything. Oh, well, like Harry's like super happy about it. It's like, all these different whales are super smart. Obviously we're going to get this done. Cisco comes back and is like, you actually haven't done anything, have you? It's like, because they can't agree on anything. Because Harry is who Harry is, and I do appreciate that's an aspect that they point out. Like, even amongst the multiverse, there's still traits and aspects about yourself that still trickle down and still play a role. For example, the fact is that he's very stubborn, doesn't want to listen to anyone, even himself in this particular regard. But it's something that Cisco kind of like almost psychoanalyzes him in the sense of like, you actually don't like yourself very much, do you? Because all the aspects, these negative things you're saying, like, oh, this is them and this is this particular version of me from a different Earth, he's like this and this Wells is like that. But it's like those aspects are exactly like you. Like the half metal Wells got stabbed in the eye by his daughter just because he's so aggravating or whatever. It's like, well, I'm sure there are points where Jesse feels like doing the same thing you. Hence why you're here in the first place, because you kind of got kicked off the team because you're just being the way you are. And it's just kind of interesting and Cisco kind of points it out. It's like, you spend so much time acting like you're so smart. Like, you're like, oh yeah, I'm the best, I'm amazing. But in actuality, it's like, you really don't like yourself. And it's like, how can you expect to be close to people when you're not willing to like yourself? Which kind of hits a little home for me, because I'm that type of person. I really don't like myself. I kind of have a very low opinion of myself. I say that jokingly, but it's kind of a serious thing. But it's like, it's a thing where I can like understand where like that whole situation is coming from. It's like, I mean, I think a lot of people can. So it's just like, in that particular case, it's like, because for him, it's like all the aspects about yourself that you don't like, you're seeing reflected threefold in these three different people. It's just making you literally confront the things you don't like most about yourself. Also, I thought it's kind of sad that the whole situation with Cisco having seen one of the other Wells' junk, and then Harry's like, yeah, because Cisco's like, yeah, I don't think I can like close my eyes without seeing your junk, and he's like, and Harry's like, you're welcome, and it's like, what? So, but luckily they were able to come together and they move past their things like, oh, this is great about you and this is great about you, and that other Wells being like, you know what's great about you guys? You all have two eyes, and it's like, yeah, I'm glad we can agree on everything. So ultimately, it all comes back to the end of the episode when they do confront DeVoe, because they finally tracked him down, which Barry's like, no, let's not worry about anyone else. Let's take care of this ourselves, because this way, for the longest time, we've never had the upper hand on the enemy, and now we do. But when they answer the door, a lady answers to her like, oh, you're looking for my husband, Clifford. But which immediately, like, is that really his wife, or is that just his assistant playing along? Because the moment he comes up in the wheelchair, they're like, whoa, like, it's like, he's like, oh, are you looking for me? And he just seems like a normal dude. So it kind of catches him off guard, because it's like, okay, this is like the mad, like, big villain, the big bad guy that's in for, like, whoa, is this really the case? And once again, I will reflect, let's not forget Wells pretended to be paralyzed and he was actually a speedster, so don't let looks fool you. I'm curious to see what they do next episode, because now they're caught off guard, especially this whole presentation, because at least in Wells' case, he was alone keeping up the front in this particular case. Well, no, because it wouldn't actually be that much of, because everyone kind of did the same thing too, because obviously, like, Hunter Zolomon pretended to be Jay Garrick in season 2, but now it's just, I'm curious to see how they handle this, because especially because the fact of the matter is he changed his appearance. So, like, the whole him being in a wheelchair thing didn't shock me too much because of the whole, like, chair situation, but still, like, that does make me wonder, how did he change his appearance like that? So either it's part of his abilities, like, because we don't know exactly where he stands on the scale of things. I'd assume, this is the metahuman show, so I'd assume he's a metahuman, but it's like, Because for him, it's like this whole situation, he saw the calculations. He knew it would happen eventually, which the lady, his assistant's kind of, once again, I don't know if that's really his wife or really his assistant, but nevertheless, she is kind of worried about it. But for him, it's like, no matter what, everything's going to end the same way with my victory. So the question is, what is this all about? Why are you after metahumans? For what purpose is this all about? Why are you what put him in this position to become the villain he is? Does he need, for Barry to come back? It was mainly to give birth to other metahumans, but could it be more to it than that? Does he need Barry for something else? Is this something personal to him? Is this about trying to get the Flash under your control so that you can get something from him, or what? I'm just curious about that whole situation. For instance, how he became the way he did. Has he always been like this? Has he been below the surface this entire time since the particle accelerator went off? And has he been calculating everything subsequently since? Has he been putting this plan together for the past 4 years, calculating every possible outcome for everything? But the thing I was getting to earlier is maybe he has because he's so powerful. Maybe his brain has psychic abilities where he can deceive perception. It's oh, you see me this way when in actuality I look like this. Not unless that's some android or something he has already stocked up that he's controlling from far away. I mean, we do know he has control of robots because there's the whole robot samurai thing. So obviously we know he's super smart and technologically advanced to be able to create something like that. So it's who's to say this couldn't be a fake version of himself that he created, or maybe it's an android meant to replicate who he originally was. So it definitely seems like the next episode is going to dive deeper into this whole situation. I caught only a glimpse of it like usual. I try to avoid looking too much at the previous and next episode. On occasion I can't help it, but most times I try to keep it low key just so I can just be okay, go into the next episode as surprised as possible. So like I said, overall a very great episode. I it's a very figuring things out, kind of introduce really Ralph taking his big steps into this whole world. I am curious to see will they be diving deeper into his subconscious to find out more about the other metahumans that are kind of on the loose and everything. So we will just have to wait to the next episode to find out. Also, I am curious though, with this whole situation resolved, does that mean we'll definitely be seeing more of the Council of Wells in the future? Or will we eventually get to the point where Harry actually gets friends? Because I like everyone's reaction when he was yeah, I'm going to call my group of friends. They're wait, friends? No. We haven't slept in a while. He must be delusional and everything. And it's just being that hard to believe. And then be oh my God, you actually have friends. That's so cool. Also, side note, little thing they added in the episode I thought was so interesting was the fact that the whole dark matter situation is messing with Cisco's power, so he can't even vibe them, because the moment he tries to vibe them, it bounced back and he vibed himself. He's I think I saw my entire birth, or maybe my death. I was that's so interesting that it can work like that. That situation's never come up before, to actually vibe yourself. That's just so interesting. It was just kind of it was almost a throwaway thing, but maybe that's just because it's people might be wondering, why doesn't Cisco just do that? Legitimately, didn't think of it, because I'm an idiot. It never once oh, why isn't Cisco vibing? It's all right, that's the thing. I don't know why, it didn't cross my mind, but the thought of vibing yourself, I mean, could he do that if he wanted to naturally? I would assume that would also mean he could basically recall every moment of his life if he needed to in that regard. I don't think it has to be just isolated to that. Or maybe because when he vibes himself, he ends up vibing his entire life all at once, and just the only moments that stuck out the most are life and death, which is kind of interesting. If you ended up seeing your death, that's a little scary too, because it's whoa, that might be leading, it could, like I said, it seems like a throwaway line, but maybe it's something that could potentially mean something, that's the whole thing about this. Talk about things that seem like they might be insignificant, and maybe they turn into something more, maybe they don't. The whole aspect of this is just about discussion, so I don't know. That was just kind of the last thing I want to add about that. So moving on. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of stuff went down in this episode, so let's break everything bit by bit. Obviously, this episode, a big focus is the fact, one of the big focuses is the fact is that Martin and Jack switch bodies, as they reference it, a Freaky Friday situation. And I love everyone's interaction, everyone's reaction to it. You have, Nate losing it, laughing about it. And you have, Zara being oh yeah. And then obviously, wink, nudge of, Sarah being well, I guess it's Tuesday. I love that. It's a little, it's when people reference TV show, the title of a movie or something, in the actual TV show or movie, like I don't know why I like that. It's just like it's super meta, and I don't know why I really dig that for whatever reason. But nevertheless, this all stems from the fact is that Helen of Troy is in 1937 Hollywood, and just kind of like her beauty and charm. Because I was wondering, like, the entire episode, it's like, oh, she's just making men act like idiots, into some like really hardcore stuff of being like gangster level stuff, because it's like, especially that end thing where it's like both studios, which I do appreciate, that Warner Brothers and K&G like butting heads over her. It's like, oh, I want her, no, I want her, and it turns into almost like a mob shootout at the end, nearing the end of the episode. Is like that. Okay, I guess that kind of fits with the time. Because even Nate was like, yeah, it involves a lot of backstabbing. I know, when he's saying that, he's saying, like, I mean, literally, like, a lot of people have died over this situation. So that made me think, like, did she have, like, some kind of magical power or something? And it's just like, no, it's just kind of like, oh, men are just stupid and easily, they don't think with their brains. They don't think with their brains and let that lead them a lot of times. So it even affects our protagonists in this episode. In particular, the ones it affects end up being Nate, Rory, and Ray. Didn't affect Stein while he was in Jack's body, but I guess that's because he has an older man's mind, so he doesn't get caught up in it. Also because he's, a married man. Plus he's also like more fixated on Hedy Lamarr, the actress he has like a super crush on, which I love that whole conversation of being like, yeah, I've had a crush on her, like, she's kind of my hall pass. It's like, what? You got a hall? What? Could you have Jax while he's in Stein's body being like, oh, I see what you're up to, Grace. Like, if you weren't married, you'd be doing the nasty and the pasty. And even cracking up at that joke where, like, Stein is like, well, I'm in you and you're in me. He's like, it's so interesting because even those aspects, I feel like it's played up in this episode, because I feel like you don't see Jax really acting like that. But I just love that, because immediately that he said that, I immediately thought that, and then Jax was laughing about it. I was like, dude, like, legitimately me and Jax on the same wavelength in that particular answer, because I would have laughed at that too, because immediately my brain took that a dirty way too. So I loved it. But it is a situation where it's like, I did appreciate it, where it's like, it's not just like Helen, it's like, no, like it's not like she's doing this on purpose, like, oh, she wants people fighting over. It's like, no, it's like a whole bunch of people fight and die over her in her original time, to the point she didn't want to go back. It's like, that's why she liked this new land, because it's like, because her, she felt like, well, it wasn't that bad. But I mean, it kind of got to that. It reflected her time to a certain extent, like I was bringing up earlier. But it was also cool seeing her get to see the ladies kind of kick some ass, like Amaya, Sarah, as well as Zari. Which, interestingly enough, it does seem like, I feel like this is the first episode she's done it, but maybe she's done it before, is that Zari adds her powers to her punches. Like, Amaya kind of taps into the power of her totem. Like, Zari, when she was hitting one dude, kind of see, like, a wind effect on, like, her punch afterwards. So it's like, oh, so, like, she can use it to amplify her powers, like, amplify herself, so she can fly, as well as, like hit with more of an impact. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And for Helen, it kind of set things a little differently in her mind about, like, oh, like, at least she feels like, oh yeah, women have things work out. There's more equality for women, in the future, which is kind of like, but I mean, things aren't as bad. Not 100% fixed, but not nearly as bad as they were in her time. So I also appreciate the fact as to what Zari did for her in this episode, because it's like, yeah, their whole thing is about fixing time and returning it, but it's like, it would have been putting her back in a situation that would have led to a lot of people fighting. It affected, because essentially it kind of stems from, like, men do what men want to do. Like, just give, like, Helen was just an excuse. She was just a means to an end. Like, people, they wanted to fight anyway, and they just chose her to be the particular thing that they fought about, essentially. So she was kind of locked up in, like, kind of kept prisoner, only with, like, one single view. And it's just like, she was treated more like an object than a person, so. But I appreciate what Zari did, because it's like, well, history said the fight continued anyway, so it's not like her being there really affected anything. And so for Zari, it's like, as long as I find a way around it, which is like, things don't have to 100% be set back the way they were. As long as time gets relatively close enough, I think it's okay. And especially in this particular instance, because it's like, well, history says you disappeared, like, no one, a part way into the war, so it's not like anyone knew where you were after that. So it's like, I get, whole timeline thing. It's like, oh, well, maybe it's because now that because that kind of brings up the whole conversation of like, well, what does that mean for anachronisms? Does that mean that anachronisms kind of represent time flow as well? Like, were anachronisms supposed to happen so that Helen would be in this position to be taken somewhere else, so she'd be removed from the battle, so that's why she went missing? Or or what. I mean, it makes you wonder about that, but maybe it's just like a situation of me just overthinking the whole thing. But I do appreciate the moment like Zari's dropping her off, and I'm like, is she dropping her off with the thin mascara? Because she's like, oh yeah, this is a land of just Amazon ladies. I was like, for a second it threw me off. I was like, thin mascara. I was like, right, this is a DC. I forgot. I was like, yeah, DC show. Forgot. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So that was pretty neat. I would wonder like where. Well, obviously like this is actually before some Wonder Woman things too. Well, no, because that would that's debatable considering the whole situation of like she doesn't really age like a normal person. She is a god and everything. So I don't know. It's just like a little nod. I do appreciate that because we're also thinking about the whole thing of like you have to separate the DCEU and the like Arrowverse because it's like honestly it's better to think of it as almost like a multiverse thing of like this is on some particular Earths while the DCEUs take place on their particular Earths. It's like similar. It was just kind of a nice little touch, which I'm curious will that kind of play a role going forward or not. Like I said, I get the feeling it's just kind of winking a nudge. I'm like, that's so cool. Also considering the fact is that like Justice League is like right around the corner. It literally comes out even more so than I was thinking in my head, like, oh, it's next week. It's like, no, it comes out this week. So that's pretty cool. But nevertheless, there's a lot more to kind of digest about this episode. Obviously, this whole situation introduced back our three mainish villains, Eleanor, Kuasa, as well as Damien Dark, which I love his whole situation in this episode, especially when he found out about Jax and Stein's situation. He's just like, you switch bodies, loses it. And Eleanor's like, do you need a minute? He's like, oh no, I'm good. Let's kill him. I'm just like, I love you because you're such a dash. Like, he has a little bit of charm to him. And that's always, I think, one of his best attributes as a bad guy, just because he's stupid powerful. Because even to the point everyone was like, yeah, like he took down all those like time bureau agents like it was nothing just because of his powers and everything. So, but I appreciate him and Sarah's like one-on-one fight. And he's like, well, I don't need magic to kill you. And she's like, Oliver Queen said the same thing before he killed you. I'm like, oh, gotcha. I was like, that's so good. That really pissed him off too. But I did like the twist on Eleanor being his daughter. I thought it was kind of interesting because the moment like Rory attacked and Ray, she caught it. I was like, what was that? Is that whole Red Eye situation not just Mollis? Is that something else too? Or could it be that Mollis is her totem? Like she taps into Mollis to use her powers. Is that what that's supposed to represent? I mean, it also seems like she can just use, she didn't need the whole Red Eye situation. It seems like the moment she touched Sarah, she could do the whole thing that he does, like killing people like that. So is that kind of like, was that just Mollis kicking in for a little bit, or is that just kind of an attribute of her using her powers? Like when she taps into that particular aspect of her magic, it does that. Or like I said, is he like her totem? I don't know, I'm very interested to learn about that, but also it's interesting that Damien Dark has a daughter. Like that plays a big part in this whole situation. Like there's been a lot of fatherhood around, like obviously Stein being a father, now Damien Dark being one. And obviously, like, Amaya's got her whole family situation, which kind of gets complicated with the whole Kuasa thing. We'll get to that soon enough. Then you have Oliver dealing with the whole parenthood situation. You have Alex wanting to be a parent one day. I don't know, it's just kind of interesting how that all just worked out. Like, fatherhood has become, like, a very built, like, thing. I mean, it's already been a thing throughout everything anyway, but it's, like, it's really kicking up even more so. I mean, especially when you think about going forward, too. It's like, Black Lightning's a dad, too. So, I don't know, it's just funny to think about. I am curious about how that whole thing went about. Also, I'm forgetting, like, I felt like there was one more example of Slade. He has his whole father situation going on. I mean, him being the father in that particular situation. But nevertheless, but I'm very interested to see how that whole situation continues. I do love that whole, because Hetty being the one, like, she being not only an actress, that she's actually a super smart lady, hence why, like, Stein has a super crush on her and everything. Her being the one that's like, oh, no, actually, you guys fusing back together might fix this whole situation. And it's like, oh, I also appreciate her calling him the Nuclear Man. It's like, we're Firestorm, not the Nuclear Man. Because I think that's also one of their aliases. It was like, the Nuclear Man is another name he's known by, Firestorm is. So I thought it was kind of interesting too. In this episode, we got to see, instead of it being Jax's body as the focal point of the Firestorm, in this particular case, it's Stein. And because it looks so weird because you're so used to it being like, obviously in the previous case being Ronnie, in this case it being Jax. It's so interesting seeing it be Stein. And even he's like, well, my body's not used to this. I'm being an old man. Because for him, it's just like, well, Jax is kind of the body while he acts as kind of more of the mental mind of like, okay, like this is what we should do, like how they work in unison, just kind of the whole aspect of him being older, Jax being young. So luckily the whole situation worked out and they ended up returning to their normal bodies. I did appreciate Nate being like, okay, tell me Firestein is going to be a thing from now on, but it seems like it's a one-off thing. But it's because it does beg the question why that never happens often enough, why that happens now. But I guess it's because Jax was in Stein's body at the particular time, so that's why. Because one person is always reserved as like the main body for the transformation, I guess. I don't know. I've never really taken the time to really ever think. Like I never thought about it. Even with the whole Ronnie situation, I don't remember if that ever really crossed my mind. Why Ronnie in particular? I just was like, it is what it is, and left it at that. So, but obviously another part of the episode is the whole Kuasa situation. Turns out, lo and behold, she is related to Amaya. That in fact is her granddaughter, one of her granddaughters. Which I figured as much because the whole like, oh, you die and I'd be killing myself situation. They kind of referenced that at the beginning of the episode too in a preview. And like, of course, like that has to be that. I was like, but I was thinking like, I didn't think granddaughter. I thought like distant descendant or something. I thought she was like from the future. Like further in the timeline, like one of her later descendant from like below Maya or something. But it's like, no, I mean, not Maya, Mari, because that's actually Mari's sister. But it's like, I was like, well, because it can make sense considering the fact is that Mari was adopted. So it's like, who's to say she can also have a sister that was adopted too? So now you just kind of see where they both end up, like Mari being a superhero and obviously Kuasa being a villain, caught up in this whole like Malice situation working with bad guys. Because the whole conversation of like, oh, look at you, you're using your powers for this, but look at me, I've used my, it's like, how can you pervert the power of the totem? Because I like that too. It's like her powers aren't like meta abilities. It's like it's from a totem. She's actually fused with her totem. That's why she doesn't see it. That's why you don't see her wearing it. It's just because it's a part of her. Which then turns into the whole conversation of, well, why do you want Zarya removed from the picture? Like, I'm curious about that whole situation. I mean, it seems like she owes animosity towards Amaya because it's like, well, our family situation the way it is. I grew up the way I did is because of you. Because Amaya didn't do her job. Her village got destroyed. Her daughter was left alone. And then her daughter wasn't in the picture for her grandchildren. So, once again, I have not seen Vixen, which I need to fix that so badly. But, it seems like things weren't easy, but they worked out okay for Amaya, but we still for Mari, I keep doing that, but we haven't seen what it has really resulted in for Kuasa. She did say something like, you always looked beautiful, like, which begs the question of like, does that mean I think that might mean that at some point in time, because she does have the power to time travel, she went back in time and met Amaya before they confronted each other like this, like, so she, like Amaya, like she probably did looked at it from afar, much like Amaya did earlier in this, at the beginning of the season when it came to Mari, which is kind of interesting. Maybe it'd be kind of interesting if they did do that because it'd be like a reflection. Because Mari is still unaware of Amaya. To be fair, she did know about her. Kind of throw the whole timeline out of whack, whole situation. So. Because Ray immediately, you could tell he knew something because the moment he heard the name Kuasa, it was like, well, he knew her profile and everything like that. So I'm surprised Nate didn't know anything about her, but maybe it's just because like Nate never really dived too deeply because it's like all he needed to know about Amaya was here. So, and also that was like her family situation. So I guess for him, it wasn't, his business to really be meddling in and everything. So I guess that's why Nate didn't know about her. I wonder if that's something that has popped up in Vixen. I need to get around to watching it at some point in time. I just haven't taken the time out to really do it. And then it looks really good and interesting. Like, it's been quite a while since I've sat down and watched a DC animated show in the first place. Anyway, I catch Teen Titans Go and everything once in a while, but that's its own thing. Like, something of that vein and structure, very like DC cartoons before now, like, Teen Titans or Justice League or Batman, in particular, well, any particular Batman, whether it's the Batman animated series from the 90s, Batman Beyond, stuff like that of that nature, Superman. So, but nevertheless, I am curious to find out how they got down to this point. Like, what is she hoping to gain from this whole Mala situation? I guess, what does Dark plan to gain from this? I mean, he's back alive again. I mean, it's not like he has to worry about the whole situation from season 2, because it's like, well, that was to ensure that he didn't die. It's like, well, I'm back now. This is present day me that's back again. So I don't have to necessarily worry about that. My destiny's been changed. And obviously, like, does beg the question how the whole Eleanor situation happened. I'm sure we'll kind of dive into that soon enough. I hope we get an episode like we did last season with the Legion of Doom. We got an episode that was like, no, like, this is the Legion of Doom side of things. So maybe we will, maybe we won't. It does put Amaya in a very bad situation, because it's like, well, we're the ones to fix Tom. We're not here to edit. We're not the ones to decide how things are supposed to go. But it's like, if she sees that what happens to one of her grandchildren is kind of going down the wrong path, you know, she was kind of fine with things being the way they are with Mari. It was harder to accept things kind of being the way they are, because it would just erase all the good that Mari's done. It would destroy the life that she's built for herself being Vixen. So there's that. But then, like, if it means like restoring some goodness to her family's life, like bringing Mari and Kuasa together and them being like a happy family tag team, like superhero duo thing, then I don't think she'll do it. But it does beg the question of, you know, it's definitely something that obviously is going to be in her mind. So, because an interesting thing too that was also brought up in this episode is the whole anachronism situation, because it seems like Dark and them want the anachronisms to keep going, but it's like, for what purpose? I can only assume this is for Mollus's sake, but then it's like, for what? Could it be that Mollus feeds off time being distorted and everything? Is that what these anachronisms have done for him? Like, has Mollus always been a thing, or was it there messing with time, like them creating the anachronisms that released him? Was he sealed away or something? Is he still somewhat sealed away, and he can only fully release until, like, he can only release once time starts breaking? So is he feeding off of this? Is this slowly freeing him, these whole anachronism things happening? Reason why they want it all continued? That also begs the question, has Flashpoint affected this in any shape or form too? Because by Barry creating Flashpoint and then reversing Flashpoint, like as Jay explained it to him in season 3, like he broke the timeline a little bit. It's cracked. So could that be something there? Or is it just in general that Mollus wants to break time in general, you know? Because he exists in every period of time anyway. That's kind of his whole setup, at least right now. So I am curious to learn, like, what this is all really about, what the end all be all is for Mollus, you know? So I guess we'll just kind of have to wait and see. Like I said, a great episode. I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.